It's Baseball at the Corner. This is the Michigan in Trouble podcast with your hosts, Alex S. Freeman and Luke Jaconis. Hello, Luke.
Hey, buddy. How are you, man?
I'm good. It is, it's Thursday at about 3:30 Central Time for those that pick up the audio of this, and that seems important to time. Not always important to timestamp things when we talk about them, but in this particular week, it feels important to timestamp when we're having this conversation. We got the players' reaction to Major League Baseball's proposal for the economic situation of 20 to put it bluntly, the players were not happy.
If for those of you who may have watched the show Ebert and Roper, or Siskel and Ebert before it was Ebert and Roper back in the day, this got a massive thumbs down from the players. And I want to make something clear at the end of our episode on Sunday, or our Monday episode, or our full length episode. I was kind of changing my tune the week before. I was with ownership. Towards the tail end, I was like, I think I'm with the players. I'm all players now. This was a joke. I mean, honestly, in terms of the proposal. Now, don't get me wrong. We have to understand one thing, the thing that we've been talking about this entire time. This is legitimately millionaires fighting with billionaires. Mm-hmm. And no matter who wins, this is an absolutely horrendous look for baseball right now. Every other sport that is eligible to come back at least seems to be doing so. NHL is just kind of waiting to get the green light, but they've got their proposal set. NBA is actively shopping and figuring out things to pick up their season. Golf, UFC, NASCAR. I think I even saw certain soccer leagues are coming back. And then there's baseball. Baseball is that dysfunctional family. Baseball right now is the drunk uncle who ruins Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. The National Women's Soccer League will be the first American pro team sport to be back, and I'm excited about that, mostly because I of the two professional soccer leagues, I prefer the NWSL to the MLS. Just think those players are way more fun to watch and much less babies. It's interesting, Luke, because after the players balked at the proposal, I saw this tweet on Twitter, as that's where you see tweets, from Tony Paul, who writes for the Detroit News, I believe is who Tony Paul writes for. Not sure the MLB players are thinking this through. Nobody feels sorry for them right now. Nobody. Tony,
yeah, he's not wrong.
I don't necessarily feel sorry for the players, but am I supposed to feel sorry for ownership? No.
I don't know I don't know who I should feel sorry for, who I shouldn't feel sorry for. I almost want to give both these sides the middle finger and tell them, like, F you. I'll wait for football. Like the NFL, as of now, seems to be coming back. I love the Bears. You're a Lions fan. I'm about 10 seconds away from saying, let's just take this, throw it out, and make this a football podcast. I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, I don't know. That tweet is right. Really, I mean, although I just said, like, I do side with the players with what's going on right now, I can take off the sunglasses or the blinders and be like, in the grand scheme of things, that everything that's going around the world right now, no one does feel sorry for the players, and nobody feels sorry for the owners. It's like, but this is I know we're a PG family show, but this is a cluster F. If you know what comes at the end of that word, that's what this is right now.
Cluster fun.
Yeah. I almost thought you just said it right there, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Whoa!" You got to drop the first F-bomb and not me. I was like, that just doesn't seem right. But no, this is a mess.
Yeah, it really, really is a mess. And I think that's the biggest thing here is that we are starting to see other leagues come back, and so it's no longer they've lost the first mover advantage where they could be the first. Here we go, baseball's coming back, y'all. Now they're gonna limp to the finish line and
maybe not even get there.
Yeah, and at the rate they're going with the negotiations, it's like, okay, 2020 may not happen, and we may lock out in 2021 just because they've created so much ill will between both sides that I don't see how they come to an agreement on a new collective bargaining agreement, let alone this weird situation. And so, just real quickly, just for those that haven't been paying attention, here's what we know right now. MLB proposed a sliding pay scale for an 82-game season. Highest paid players take the highest cuts. Top paid players taking almost a 70% cut in pay. and the bottom tier players, it looks closer to like 10 to 15%. And it does protect the players in case of playoff cancellation due to a second wave of the coronavirus. And there's bonus money attached for playoff games that get played. But we saw the reaction from the top paid players, and I think it's right. That suddenly you have guys like Mike Trout going from making $200,000 a game to making less than $70,000 a game. Yeah. And that's a massive pay cut. Like I would not want to go to work if they were like, we're going to pay you $20 an hour. Actually, we're going to pay you $7 an hour.
Yeah. I get it.
And so like when you scale it that way, it starts to make sense. But yes, obviously we are like, to be paid $100,000 to play a baseball game feels excessive. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, the amount of revenue that having Mike Trout on the field can generate for you under normal circumstances is more than worth that investment.
Yeah, I think the one thing, I saw some tweets from our guy, Jeff Passan. We have got a definitive answer. His last name is Passan. And he's been tweeting like crazy this whole weekend. And honestly, rightfully so, given the scape of what's going on right now. And I think he tweeted out something that was along the lines of like, there has been a strained relationship between players and ownership for years. Now this is just kind of bringing it to the spotlight. And instead of getting to address it over a 3 to 4 month off season, it is now essentially being dragged out and displayed for everyone to see. And now they need to come to years and years of bickering. They need to find a solution essentially within a week.
Yeah. Yeah. They have to resolve years and years. It's been almost a quarter century of like quote unquote labor peace in Major League Baseball, but it hasn't been peaceful by any means. It hasn't quite hit a head like this.
Yeah,
in that time.
Like if I remember correctly, I think the last strike was the 95 season because that was the year I was born. That's how I always kind of remember it. And then I think there was I read something that there was in the early 2000s, there was like almost a strike, but nothing really ever came to it. And they came to some sort of agreement. But this is like, at least as long as I've been a fan and watching, as closely and consistently and really like paying attention to the ins and outs of the game. And this is the first time I've ever seen something like this. And what a heck of a time for it to happen during a global pandemic.
Yeah. And I think that and it makes perfect sense that it happens now because I don't think there's any way to look at this other than ownership attempting to take advantage of a situation. I think that they could have, if the goal of ownership was to get baseball played, just pure and simple, I don't think that they would have attempted to reopen these labor talks. And I think that Jamel Hill tweeted today, I think I saw this tweet of, I think it's funny how owners want players to share the pain, but not the wealth. They won't fully guarantee every contract and are often quick to remind players that because they cut the checks, they should feast on the revenue. Now, she's talking specifically kind of as people look at the NFL and the way NFL ownership, but was responding to the idea that, NFL fans pay attention because we're likely to see something similar happen in the NFL as they look at playing those games in empty stadiums. Or as Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, announced today, starting in June, Texas, you'll be able to play in front of fans for pro sporting events at stadium capacities of 25%. So I think that that's a different and new wrinkle into this that we have to look at as well, because like there are states where you will be able to have ticket revenue of some kind much sooner than other places.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you would have to imagine the states like Texas, Georgia, Florida, these states who have, kind of really just gone full steam ahead with the reopening plans. Then you're going to have states like Illinois, where I don't think J.B. Pritzker or Lori Lightfoot are going to allow any sporting events until 2029. I think they're both just like, no sporting events, nothing. It's like your parents grounding you and being like, you can't go out. Yeah. So it'll be interesting, just to say the least.
Yeah, I think that, and that's the other kind of wrinkle here, is that, you know, there are definitely going to be, obviously there are revenue sharing agreements across all of the owners, and so if your Texas teams are allowed to sell 25% of their tickets, but your Chicago teams aren't allowed to sell any, that between ownership, that will be worked out just fine. And I think that's the, look at the players' response. Max Scherzer's tweet, who sits on the executive committee, got a lot of that attention. And so let me pull that up for us here. That essentially what Max is saying here is that the players have no reason to re-engage on salary, because I'm glad to hear other players voicing the same viewpoints and believe MLB's economic strategy would completely change if all documentation were to become public information. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the thing we were talking about last week. You were just talking about it. The trust between players and ownership is so low. And we have things like MLB and the ownership reporting that they make $250 million a year, and Forbes putting that number closer to $1.5 billion. Yeah. And so those numbers are so far apart. There's no reason for the players to trust ownership when they say, no, it doesn't work economically. And it's like, well, if that's the case, because what it seems like Max is saying is, if that's the case, we're willing to have the conversation. Yeah. But we don't believe you that that's the case.
He essentially saying is, you know what? We'll have the conversation, but open up your books. That's what he's saying. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what he's saying. It was kind of interesting seeing the pay discrepancies. I know I'm kind of backtracking here a bit, but for a guy like Mike Trout, I think this year he was projected to make somewhere in the 30 to 35 million, I want to say, in that camp. Might be somewhere a little bit more than that. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. But with this proposal that the owners have given to the players, that the players have soundly said no to, he would have made, like, I think, was it $7.5 million or something like that?
Yeah, which, like, again, $6 or $7 million.
Yeah, like, which again to us is like, yeah, we'll do it. I mean, I think you could convince you and me to play a major league game of baseball for free. Honestly, I think I would take at bats for free. I don't need to be paid. But then again, I'm not the best baseball player in the world. Mike Trout is. So when a guy like that is taking such a severe pay cut, and Mike Trout, by the way, is he's one of the most upstanding. He's like the face of the major leagues. He's a good guy. He plays the game right. And I can understand if he's kind of like, yeah, I don't want to do this. Now, I don't know if he's essentially come out and been as vocal as guys like Blake Snell and Max Scherzer. By the way, did you see who Blake Snell's new agent is this week?
No.
Scott Boras.
Oh, and we got an interesting memo from Boras that came out.
So Blake Snell is now represented by Scott Boras, and prior to even being represented by Scott Boras, Blake Snell's like, if I'm not getting paid, I'm not playing. Mm-hmm. So it's safe to say that I don't think Blake Snell will play until maybe the next Olympics. Who knows? And not next year's Olympics. I'm talking about the 4 years after that Olympics. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, it's again, dude, just to kind of say my point from the beginning, this is a horrendous look for Major League Baseball. This is a dysfunctional catastrophe that is just showing to everybody around the world how lopsided, how much tension, how much almost disrespect there is between ownership and players and ownership. This is an absolute mess. And I don't know if we're going to come to a solution in a week. We said last week's episode that like early June, we needed something like a hard, that first, the first few days of June. It's May 28th when we're recording this. And right now it is like a bad divorce settlement. It's just low blows, cheap shots. No one's coming to an agreement, and it doesn't look like we are going to come to one anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, Luke. I think that we have this situation where you have agents like Scott Boras, who represents something like 71 Major League Baseball players. His agency negotiated $1.2 billion worth of contracts last year. And he's saying to his guys and to the rest of the league and a lot of, everybody else's agent is going to do what Scott does. They're not going to do something. They're going to try and go around that because he has all of the top guys in the game. and he says, they can't play without you. And so if they want to recoup any of the losses here, then that's what we gotta just hold firm to that. And I think we're going to see players hold firm here. And I think that the pressure is going to either get to ownership, or we're not going to play in 2020. And then we have to start looking at what the new collective bargaining agreement going into 2021 is going to look like.
If you're a player right now, you have to be feeling really great if you have Scott Boras as your agent. It's pretty well known throughout sports, just, in general, that Scott Boras is a cutthroat agent. There are some other words and adjectives I have heard people use to describe him. But again, this is a family show, so I'm not going to display those or give those examples right now. But seriously, if you're a player and Scott Boras is your agent, you have to be feeling so great right now. He's going to get you the best deal. And even if to us, the general public or sports writers or whoever it may be, don't like the way he handles himself or how his ethics, whatever you want to call it, he is doing his job as an agent where he's getting his players and his clients the best deal. I guess they're not really his players, but his clients the best deals possible. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Jose Valverde, if I want to use a Tigers kind of metaphor here, or simile. Valverde was one of those guys, when he would get a save, he'd pump his chest, he'd go crazy. And if you were a Tigers fan, you would get stoked too. You'd be jazzed, you'd be pumped, you'd be amped. If you were watching or going against Valverde when he do that, you'd be like, this guy sucks. I hate this guy. He's a bum. He's a piece of what. He's the worst. So it's kind of the same thing. Scott Boras and Jose Valverde, like the same thing. If you got them on your team, if they're playing for you, you love them. If they're not on your team, if they're not on your squad, you can't stand them. And that's kind of where it is. I mean, he's good at what he does. Got to give it to him.
Yeah, and that's ultimately like what I keep coming back to as well, is that as I see, and I haven't seen a whole lot of hate towards the players in this situation. There's certainly some out there. We shared some of it earlier, but I do think that one of the things for me when I look at this situation in particular, the ownership and the players made a deal at the end of March that if we played a season, we were going to prorate the salaries at this rate. A deal was in place, and ownership has gone back on that deal. Yeah. And to, regardless of the fact of that, like, $6 million sounds great to play baseball. He was promised significantly more than that. Yeah. And sometimes in business, you make bad deals, and you don't get to just hit the reset, whether if you made the bad deal or not. You don't get to, just because this other thing happened. It doesn't mean that this happens all the time, where somebody, starts a business and they then have to stop doing whatever they're doing. Or like if you were somebody that was building a house right now and you suddenly have lost your job in the pandemic, you are not likely going to be able to go to the contractor that was building your house and say, hey, keep building my house for 70% less. Yeah. I lost my job. That's not the contractor's problem. Yeah. He will either stop building your house, or you will pay him the full amount. Yeah. And maybe he's a compassionate person and will cut back a little bit. And that's a thing that I've seen floated, that perhaps, players are we expect a deal from the player. I was hoping we'd have it before we started this recording, but we're expecting a proposal from the players by probably tomorrow is when we'll see that. That seems like it's going to include more games.
I was about to say that. Did you see that? They want over 100 games. Yeah. It sounds like they want. I mean, because right now this deal we have on the table, it's like 80 to 82 games. Everything I've been reading, it's over 100 games. So it's safe to say that the players are going to propose they want like an additional 30 games, which, I mean, I'm cool with that. I mean, more baseball to watch. Why not? I'll eat it all up. Be interesting with the schedule and how they make it all work. Yeah. I know there's a lot more that they're going to be asking for in that offer, but that was the one big sticking point I saw too. It was like they've said they want over 100 games. Probably I'd guesstimate anywhere between 100, say 105, maybe closer to it. Definitely not exceeding 110, but I'd say anywhere between 100 and 110 is probably that safe spot.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that I've seen is that perhaps what they'll counter back with is a 10% cut across the board. And that, to me, that makes a lot more sense just in general. Certainly ownership doesn't save nearly as much money as they were trying to save. But they are still saving money. They still get some additional cuts. We can maybe even the players can feel justified in getting paid a little bit less if they get 100 game checks as opposed to 82. And so I think that feels like the path we're going to go down. If a deal is going to work, it's going to be ownership more or less taking what the players counter with.
So remember what we kind of said last week. We've been saying all along, the owners, if we have a season, they're taking a bath in some way. Financially, it's going to be rough for them. But again, this coronavirus, everything going on in the world, it's a right now thing. A year from now, there's a good chance, this could all be in our rearview mirror and we're back to our normal life. There's a vaccine in place, maybe, even if there's not that, maybe we find a way where you can go to sporting events and that there's going to be a pent up demand for people who want to do that. So for the owners, I think, again, it would really benefit them if they play ball now, because in the long run, in the long game, they're going to make money hand over fist. They're going to make so much money. I mean, from ticket sales, concessions, merchandising, they are going to make so much money. That doesn't even, incorporate everything they got with their TV deals and anything with advertising and whatnot. They're going to make so much money. So I know right now it's tough for them to probably be like, it is a risk for them. I can see it. Mm-hmm. I think they need to start thinking the end game here, so to speak, and, play ball and try to meet them. Maybe they counter again. We were texting on Monday when that first kind of initial deal broke, and we were like, this isn't the first offer we're going to see this week. We're going to see, this is going to be a back and forth week. And, it's been everything like that. And I know we're not trying to go super long with these episodes on Thursday, but if we want to end the show on a bit of a positive note, I don't know if this was in our notes or anything, but I saw that one thing from that tweet, I think it was from Evan Woodbury about the Tigers. And while every other team is taking like a financial bath throughout all this, the Tigers have potentially saved, what was it, like, was it 24 or 42 million dollars?
Yeah, somewhere in the 40s.
It was in the 40s,
ad contracts.
Yeah,
that is great.
So in a really weird kind of sick and twisted way, the Tigers just banked a little payroll. They made some little money out of this. I mean, I don't mean to make light of everything that's going on in the world right now, but I mean, we are a Tigers podcast, obviously, and so I guess good on them. They banked some money. I guess well done. Literally, the Tigers win.
Yeah. There it is. We got a Tigers victory today.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we have more of those coming. I think that if we get a 2020 season, hopefully it's got to be better than 2019, right?
I haven't. Oh, well, I mean, God, I could go play wiffle outside butt naked. That'd be better than 2019 with the Tigers did. I mean, my God, I watched a lot of horror movies around Halloween time. That was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life, the 2019 Tigers season. But yeah, no, I those MLB The Show simulations, while I haven't been watching them like super closely, I do just kind of see like the tweets they send out from time to time. In the MLB simulation, we're doing quite well, it seems. Every time the last week or so, I've been seeing consecutive wins and numerous wins. So who knows?
They at least seem competitive digitally, and so we'll take that.
Can they be competitive realistically? That's the question.
Right. Fingers crossed.
I hope. We'll see, buddy.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully have players' proposal by the end of the week, and hopefully some more news to talk about when the full show drops on Monday morning. Yeah. But otherwise, those of you that are listening to the audio version of this know that there's a video version that happens on Facebook on Thursdays. And if there's those of you watching the video version here on Facebook, know that there's an audio version that you can head over to anchor.fm/Michigan and Trumbull, and you can find it at your favorite podcast app, whatever that happens to be. Personally, I'm an Apple Podcasts guy because I like the default on my phone. But otherwise, that's it for us here. Luke, have a great weekend, and we will hopefully be back with better news on Monday.
Yeah, let's do it, buddy.